Okay. I'd like to call to order tonight's regular meeting of the City Council. Will the recorder call the roll?
Councillor Duggar,
I am here.
Councillor Hartmeyer Prigg,
Here.
Councillor Hassan,
Here.
Councillor Kenny,
Here.
Councillor Teeter,
Here.
Councillor Tifnon, Mayor Beatty.
Here. Our agenda for this evening include 2 executive sessions. In accordance with Oregon law, members of the news media are required to leave the room for the first executive session, but are permitted to attend the second executive session. Therefore, we kindly ask you to leave. Just kidding. Request that members of the news media exit the room before we begin our first session. We will then invite members of the news media to return before commencement of the second executive session. Following both sessions, we will reconvene in an open session. The Beaverton City Council will now meet in executive
Recording in progress.
All right, we are already in session, so no need to call. Tonight with visitor comment. However, if there's follow-up needed, we have.
We have no one registered for visitor comment tonight.
Mayor, if you could just turn your mic on, please.
Is that really helpful for you? Okay, thank you. So we have a proclamation, city manager's report, consent agenda, presentation, 2 hefty public hearings, and a work session. We're going to start tonight with the council proclamation. Councilor Duggar is going to read it.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas International Transgender Day of Visibility was founded on March 31st, 2009 by transgender activist Rachel Crandall to celebrate the achievements of transgender and gender nonconforming people and to raise awareness of the discrimination they face. And whereas the City of Beaverton is committed to fostering a diverse and inclusive community where all individuals are valued, respected, and treated with dignity, and whereas the transgender community is an integral part of the city, enriching our cultural fabric through unique experiences, talents, and perspectives. And whereas this day also serves as an opportunity to raise awareness of the challenges faced by transgender people, including discrimination, prejudice, and the need for continued advocacy for equal rights and protections. And whereas the City of Beaverton acknowledges the rich diversity within our community, including transgender and gender nonconforming residents, and recognizes the importance of creating an environment that is welcoming, supportive, and affirming for all. And whereas by promoting awareness and understanding, we strive to build a more compassionate and inclusive city, cultivating a sense of belonging for everyone, regardless of gender identity. And now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Beaverton, Oregon, do hereby proclaim March 31st, 2025 as Transgender Day of Visibility in the City of Beaverton.
All right, thank you, Councilor Duggar. City Manager.
All right, well, thank you, Mayor. I have 4 items this evening, and I'll wait for the slide deck to get up. And I'm very excited about the first one, and you should all figure that out in a matter of moments. Yes. All right, so I am thrilled, and so is the city, to announce the hiring of our new assistant city manager. Her name is Elizabeth Coffey. She is to my left, who joined the team this month. So welcome, Elizabeth. This position directly reports to the city manager and will oversee human resources, finance, information services, as well as the Beaverton Municipal Court, and currently the city's response to homelessness. Elizabeth Coffey comes to us from the city of Gresham as the assistant city manager, and while she was there, she helped to implement long-term fiscal sustainability plan and launched a citywide community engagement program to better connect with marginalized residents. So welcome, Elizabeth. We are so excited that you are here. Next slide. So I'd like to spotlight our North Transmission Line intertie. This is an important infrastructure project that will provide a secondary water supply in the event of a major earthquake, other emergency, or maintenance need. Currently, the city has a single water supply line provided by the South Transmission Line, which was not built to current seismic standards. So the North Transmission Line is a new 24-inch transition main that will be seismically resilient, and it's a very important connection to our existing water supplies like the Joint Water Commission. I also wanted to give you an update on the different segment work that's underway. Our pipe work for segment 1A is currently complete. The pipe work on segment 1B is underway and mostly is occurring during the day on Southwest 173rd Avenue between Southwest Baseline and Southwest Walker Roads. The pipe work on segment 1C is underway and will be a mixture of day and night work on Southwest 170th Avenue between Southwest Baseline Road and Southwest Tualatin Valley Highway. Segment 2 work is proposed to start in late May as a part of Washington County's Walker Road Phase 3 project, and this is through an intergovernmental agreement. The beginning of the segment 2 work will focus on the relocation of the Portland General Electric power poles, and this should take about 6 months. And then finally, segment 3 design plans are approximately 30% complete. Alignment alternatives for the final mile of the segment 3 through the city of Hillsborough are currently under review. We have a few March events and reminders on this slide. The first is I'd like to give a shout out, one, to just recognize the mayor's staff and the city staff for doing a great job on the state of the city. If you did not attend, that's okay, because we have the video and the transcript that's going to be posted soon. So please check our website, beavertonoregon.gov/SOTC, if you're interested. The other note that we want to make is that we're going to have a citywide fee review. It will be a public hearing. For those of you that are not aware of what city fees are, they pay for a variety of important services, ranging from planning to public records requests, municipal court fees, to just mention a few. And we also want to make sure that we're ensuring equitable and efficient cost recovery. So a hearing will be held on April 1st, on Tuesday at 6 o'clock. So come on out and listen to that. And then the last is that through state grants, the city offers a free confidential mediation facilitation, conflict resolution services. So if you're interested in registering, you can go to our website. We have community workshops, which are called Introduction to Compassion Communication. It's going to be held on March 22nd from 9 to 5 at the Beaverton building. And then wrapping up with the last slide, we just want to thank the nonprofits. We recognize that running a nonprofit is no small task. This is why we're collaborating with organizations to get the assistance that they need. And thanks to $1 million state and federal grant funding and local organizations like the Oregon Startup Center and the Beaverton Area Chamber of Commerce, the Nonprofit Incubator Program has launched to provide educational programming, consultation, and on-site services. This is actually currently under construction, and the grant funds are being used to build out a collaborative space in our E-suites. So we encourage you to check it out once we have a nice grand opening, but we're very excited, and again, congratulations. The mayor's office and the mayor herself had a lot to do with this program, so we are very excited that this is going to get launched soon. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for recapping the state of the city with all your updates. I'm just kidding. She did it more efficiently too. But was there pizzazz? I mean, that's the thing. Council President, consent, please.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Right, it's been moved and seconded by Councilor Duggar. Any conversation?
If I could just make a quick comment, I saw the Cooper Mountain plan there, and oof, that feels like a lot of work that some of us have been doing for a couple years. So really excited for staff to be doing that, for the community, and for us to be voting on it tonight.
Any other discussion? All right, will the recorder call the roll?
Mayor Beatty? Counselor Tivnon?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Counselor Kenny?
Yes.
Counselor Hussam?
Yes.
Counselor Hartmeyer Prigg?
Yes.
Counselor Duggar?
Yes.
7-0.
Awesome. All right, emergency management overview and strategic initiatives.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Cutchin. I am the newer emergency manager for the city of Beaverton. I don't think I've met a lot of you yet. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person. As you may know or may not know, emergency management is now under the police department, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak before you this evening. We're going to go over a couple items: the emergency management mission statement and some updated metrics, notable volunteer activities, and strategic initiatives and accomplishments of emergency management. Our mission statement: the City of Beaverton's emergency management program is dedicated to fostering a resilient community by preparing for, mitigating, responding to, and recovering from disasters and emergencies. Through proactive planning, collaboration with local and regional partners, and community engagement, we strive to protect lives, property, and the environment. Our commitment is to build a culture of preparedness, enhance response capabilities, and ensure an all-inclusive and equitable approach to emergency management for all residents and businesses in Beaverton. I want to give you an update on EOC activations. We've had 9 EOC activations since I've been here in the past 8 months. 6 are weather-related, 2 severe heat emergencies, 2 severe thunderstorms, 1 during night market, and a more recent one that caused a power outage at City Hall, and 2 extreme winter weather incidents. We also had an air quality monitoring occurrence due to the wildfires, and that was during the parade. We activated for the statewide iron ore functional exercise, where emergency management provided fictitious status reports of Beaverton's community lifelines. We also activated for the Beaverton real-world middle school threat incident. I wanted to go over some of emergency management's roles during a severe weather event. Before the incidents, preparedness and mitigation, emergency management activates the Emergency Operations Center, otherwise known as the EOC, to monitor, forecast, and facilitate coordinated efforts, disseminate warnings to applicable operational staff, coordinate with internal departments and external partner agencies, and ready CERT volunteers to help staff the cooling or warming center if needed. During the incident or response, we continually assess and prioritize weather risk. In the EOC, we coordinate briefings with the operations team and support first responders. We update the county and state on the status of Beaverton's community lifelines, which provides far-reaching situational awareness, and we ready and deploy damage assessment teams if necessary. After the incident, or recovery and resilience, we provide additional resources if needed for disaster recovery operations, coordinate financial assistance programs, conduct after-action reviews, and develop corrective action plans, and engage in long-term mitigation planning to strengthen the community's resilience against future events. Throughout the incident, emergency management ensures that accurate information flows effectively between all entities. I want to highlight some of our accomplishments of our emergency management volunteers over the past year. Over the past year, volunteers have put in over 3,871 hours. Over the past year, we've had 157 unique volunteers, which means we've had 157 active volunteers over the last year. They participated in 112 total events, and out of our volunteers, 234 are ham radio certified. Our most prominent group that you're probably aware of, our most visible, is the Community Emergency Response Team, the CERT team. Some of the more known activities they've conducted over the past year: they've supported city events by providing first aid and situational awareness. They assisted with family reunification during the real-world middle school threat incident. They staffed the cooling center during severe heat emergencies. They continue to provide training and readiness activities for volunteer personnel, and they assisted with logistical support for 2 law enforcement memorials. This is another emergency management volunteer team. You may or may not know of them, the Beaverton Emergency Radio Team, otherwise known as BERT. Most recently, they utilized a $15,000 Homeland Security radio grant to increase the city's communication capabilities during pre-planned city events and emergencies, relocated radio repeaters to bolster radio coverage within the city, and participated in the statewide iron ore exercise, testing our emergency communication with our regional and state partners. Through our participation in the Regional Disaster Preparedness Organization, otherwise known as RDPO, Emergency Management has applied for a $20,000 grant to enhance radio coverage for individuals and businesses in the Cooper Mountain area. We also have a group of volunteers called EM Outreach Volunteers. They provide outreach to the city's diverse population. They have provided preparedness materials at the Centro de Bienvenido Fair. They recently facilitated a focus group with the city's Iranian community to identify the most effective methods for delivering preparedness information. They presented at Villa Village Preparedness Education, which strives to support older adults in living independently in their homes. And they have provided several B2 Weeks Ready presentations, which are emergency preparedness initiatives that encourage self-sufficiency for at least 2 weeks following a disaster. Through the RDPO, Emergency Management has also applied for a $10,000 grant specifically to enhance outreach efforts across Beaverton's diverse and culturally rich community. Let's get to the emergency management strategic initiatives. These are supported by the recent Emergency Management Program Assessment report conducted by Stantec. Recommendation number 1, create a formal emergency management steering committee, and thus the Beaverton Emergency Services Operations Group was born, BSOG. The participants for this group were identified organically when conducting after-action assessments of the response to emergency incidents. Currently, representatives from core emergency operations departments are included: Emergency Management, Police Department, Public Works, Human Resources, Library, our Safety Officer, Public Information Officers, and Homeless Program Manager. This list will continue to grow as we add new members. This group, facilitated by Emergency Management, will coordinate efforts to develop emergency plans and procedures. This all-encompassing approach eliminates silos and creates buy-in for plans. We will also conduct after-action reports and develop corrective action plans following exercises and real-world events. This ensures all voices are heard. This covers 2 other recommendations from the study. It is necessary to assign city departments to take on more concerted efforts in reviewing and updating emergency plans. And another recommendation, after-action report enhancement. Utilize the steering committee for after-action reviews and plan updates to take a more holistic approach. Together, BSOG, we have worked together in a coordinated effort to respond to emergency events, including severe weather incidents. All departments operated with a shared and coordinated understanding of the situation. We've worked together to develop a severe winter weather emergency plan. We will be participating in a winter weather season after-action hot wash, which is a debrief, on April 3rd. We will go over lessons learned from our winter weather and recommended improvements. During the next fiscal year, we will continue to meet and work as a group to update the city's emergency operations plan. Emergency Operations Center, Design, Development, and Training. Recommendation from the study: develop an EOC staff roster consisting of primary and backup positions. We are currently working to restructure the EOC based on FEMA guidelines and best practices. EOC staff will be assigned and their backups based on their city positions and organized in an EOC support function model. This focuses on interdepartmental coordination by function. We will ensure that EOC personnel are trained per the new FEMA National Qualification System Guidelines, or NQS. There has always been recommended training for incident command and IMTs, but very little guidance for EOC staff themselves. The new FEMA NQSs help fill this training gap previously noted for EOC personnel. We will also ensure that incident and unified command staff, police, public works, are trained according to FEMA NIMS guidelines. It should be noted that ITS, working with EM, has been integral to increasing the readiness of the physical EOC. Emergency Management is also working with ITS to develop a ransomware cyber attack tabletop exercise. Emergency Management and Homeland Security Partner Engagement. Recommendation: develop a comprehensive engagement strategy for external emergency management and Homeland Security partners. I'm sure I don't have to tell you, but in emergency management, relationships are about 50% of the job. Effective relationships with your internal and external emergency management and Homeland Security partners. I have been actively engaging in developing relationships with our external partners, including Northwest Oregon Health Preparedness Organization under the Oregon Health Authority. This is to increase our bioterror response capability and increase our pandemic response capability. I've also established relationships with the Beaverton School District, TVFNR, and THPRD. This is also to build response capabilities. As in participating with the Regional Disaster Preparedness Organization, I have participated in grant allocation committees. I was on the committee that helped rank the 2025 RDPO grant projects. And we recently participated in an emergency management and homeland security regional strategy development. Emergency management also participates in the Washington County Emergency Management Cooperative, where all the emergency managers throughout the county get together to coordinate activities, resources, and strategies. We also work on public and private partnerships, which also include Nike. Emergency management staffing. The study also noted, compared with cities of similar size, a staffing level of 2 full-time positions is considered adequate. It further noted that cities of similar size also typically share the resource burden across departments out of a recognition that the support of other departments is a necessity in resource-constrained environments. On that note, the Deputy Emergency Manager position, our second position, is currently posted, and we are working towards filling the second full-time position. The study also suggests relying on volunteers to augment additional staffing needs. It should be noted that the emergency management volunteers are a huge asset to the city and augment the need for additional full-time staff above the allotted 2 full-time positions. In the future, and budget willing, I would like to discuss some temporary staff positions. I would like to create a Beaverton Emergency Management Internship Program. Portland State University offers degrees in emergency management and community resilience. It's extremely difficult to gain the necessary experience in emergency management to obtain full-time positions. An internship program would give back to the community by helping students obtain practical knowledge and experience to obtain full-time positions. The second temporary staff position I would like to talk about would not cost the city any money at all. I would like to bring the Department of Defense, the DoD Skill Bridge program to Beaverton. This is an opportunity for active service members to gain valuable civilian work experience through internships during their last 180 days of service. This connects transitioning service members with industry partners of their choice in real-world job experiences. Participating service members continue to receive their military compensation and benefits, while industry partners provide the training and work experience. A small sample of participating industries include Arizona Department of Public Safety, NASA, City of Atlanta, Georgia, Oceanside, California Fire Department, City of Tucson, Arizona, Police, Fire, and Emergency Communications, Colorado Department of Public Safety, FEMA, El Paso, Texas Police Department, Grand Rapids, Michigan Police Department, Innovative Emergency Management, Inc., Montana Department of Justice, and the Tampa, Florida Police Department. Thank you so much for your time, and I welcome any clarifying questions at this time.
My mic is on. Hello. Thank you very much. Hopefully quick. What constitutes an emergency? Do we have some sort of a definition, like for a city, what constitutes an emergency?
There are different levels of emergencies and disasters that are outlined. It goes into the plan. I could meet offline with you if you want to discuss it.
I think, so I'm just going to tell y'all, like a couple weeks ago, our neighborhood lost power for 4 hours. Don't care. Like, I care, but we survived. But at one point, I did reach out to Jenny to be like, are we going to be gone for a while? So as the people who might get those calls, in my head, I'm thinking what's an emergency and what's not. So I'll let other counselors speak. But to me, I was like, had we lost power beyond, and it was in our whole Five Oaks, Triple Creek area, would that be constituted an emergency? Would I be contacting Jenny? And it's power, so it's different. So I'm going to let you think on that.
The big rule of thumb would be anything that goes
Thank you.
above and beyond our day-to-day resources that we would normally utilize to handle something.
Okay.
So if it's an extended, if we might be needing resources outside of our normal, everyday, day-to-day.
That's an emergency. I think by the time Jenny had investigated, we actually got power. It's like she called someone, but she didn't, but it felt like it because our power came back pretty quickly.
I did call someone.
But, I kept thinking, like, what if it wasn't coming back tonight in our whole neighborhood? And what would that have meant? And it wasn't on everybody's radar. The second question I have, and this is a little bit personal, but maybe it's more related to the internship. A lot of our communities, specifically immigrant and refugee communities, come from really traumatic, like lived experiences of escaping war and just some complicated circumstances. And with the federal administration and where this, the United States is going, there's becoming more of a fear around trusting volunteers and working with volunteers. And I'm just wondering if we offer any culturally responsive or trauma-informed training for volunteers, and if that's something we can look into, because I think, I imagine if and when an emergency did happen, would folks feel connected to be able to get the support that they needed?
We do have disaster psychology training.
Mm-hmm.
Is that?
I think it's more like, you have someone who comes from a place of fear of authority and or culturally doesn't understand how emergency management works. And so are our volunteers equipped to work with those communities so that we're building trust?
That's actually what we're starting now. We're reaching out to these communities. That's why we're doing focus groups, to see what the best way would be to reach out to the different communities. So we have started that, and we're going to continue that.
Okay, thank you. And the last thing I'll leave you with, and we talked about this, I serve as the RPDO, which is the regional.
RDPO.
Thank you. Will you tell me what that stands for? Regional Disaster Preparedness?
Yes.
And one of the conversations that when I was being briefed on this was around some of the federal funding we received, and some of it was around counterterrorism. And this is more at that level, not the Beaverton level, but I was talking again about the impact of the federal administration and what is and isn't considered counterterrorism measures in terms of a policy perspective. So I'll be taking that to them at that meeting, but I had shared that with you, and I thought you should all hear it as well. Thank you.
I am going to remind us that this is a presentation and not a work session, so make sure that we direct our questions that way. Councillor Teeter.
Thank you, Nicole. I've just got a quick comment, not a question here, but I was really excited about and interested in the emergency management and homeland security partner engagement slide, and the points you made about reaching out to different stakeholders and building up new relationships who can help do the work. And there was a public-private partnership section that included Nike on the slide, but I think there's also opportunities to grow this in other areas too. Some of it might be with culturally specific organizations that can help with communication and outreach. I know when I was the executive director of the Beaverton Downtown Association, I wanted to be more closely connected with emergency management, so if there was something happening, we could help give information to the downtown community and help be a partner. So I'm excited to see this grow, excited that you're here, and just appreciate the presentation.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Can I ask a follow-up? In Michigan, I reached out to the Chamber of Commerce, the City Chamber of Commerce. Is that an organization we have here that we could reach out to?
She's sitting right there.
Yep, she's right behind you. Beaverton Area Chamber of Commerce, yes.
Can we?
Look at that. Connections and friend making.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
I look forward to working with all of you as well.
Councillor Kimmy.
I just want to just thank you for coming in. Just want to make a comment, and then I wanted to appreciate you for not just asking for staff, but you go out of your way to find the resources to fund some of the temporary, if that's possible. So I really appreciate that in our budget crunch season. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for the great presentation. Obviously, SkillBridge is an important DoD policy. It's at risk of losing funding, so I hope that we continue down that path. It's one of the best ways to help transitioning service members. And I would imagine if it works good for you, it might be an option for the city manager as well. Like most high-ranking officers leave and go into city management because it's very similar. So I think we often get caught up and think the military only does disaster, but they also, like, if you manage a base, you're a city manager for a very large city. So thank you for being the guinea pig. I appreciate that. It really works well, and I think you may or may not know that the governor appointed me to the state's emergency management board. I am the city representative and the only elected official in the new system where emergency management is broke away from the National Guard. So this is the first committee the governor did, and so I just finished my confirmation hearing for that, and so I'm excited. I have served on RTBO for a long time in my city council, and emergency management is an area of interest for me, so, which is why you get a lot of information from me. So thank you for the work. I think there's a lot of work ahead of you, and please continue to bring us updates as you see fit, and please make it so if an emergency happens, the 7 of us don't have to answer to the public on why we didn't plan things. Thanks.
Absolutely. And I did not know that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, we are into the public hearing meaty session of the evening. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing to consider an ordinance adopting a new chapter of the Beaverton City Code, Chapter 9.09 annexations. Before we move into the substance of the hearing, I'll ask the city attorney to explain how people can participate in this hearing.
Good evening. Anyone wishing to speak at this hearing should follow the instructions included on tonight's agenda. For those attending in person, please fill out the visitor comment card found at the table near the doors at the back of the council chamber and hand that over to the city recorder sitting at the end of the dais and wait to be called. After each person's comments, council members may ask questions of the presenter. When all public comment has concluded, council members may ask questions of anyone who spoke or the staff.
Any presentation? I'm guessing that's you.
Yes, I'm sitting at the table. Good evening, Mayor Beatty. I'm here tonight and I will be covering a brief overview of annexation, summary of the proposed ordinance. So in recent years, the city has approved, I would say, a few annexation applications, typically scattered properties, and usually those annexations are as they want to develop the property and will that planned development. Oh, I apologize. I saw the green light and I thought it was on. That annexation process follows state law, really is initiated by those property owners. But of course, recently in December, the Cooper Mountain Community Plan was adopted. The implementation plan was on the consent agenda tonight. And we've been on the staff side working hard to understand how to make that whole process of development in Cooper Mountain go smoothly, including the annexation process. And one of the things that was identified was an opportunity to amend the city code in order to clarify the city's processes for annexation and establish criteria in the code. So this proposed ordinance would create a new chapter, Chapter 9.09 in the city code, that would really take a relatively straightforward approach to identifying the process for annexations in compliance with state law and Metro Code, and establish some criteria that the city would use in order to evaluate whether or not to annex property to the city. There isn't a lot else to say besides that, unless you have questions. So with that, I will conclude my remarks, and I'm ready to answer any questions council may have.
Mayor, if you could turn your mic on, please.
Besides you, is there anyone else wishing to speak to the council? Anyone dying? No public?
We have received no registrations. Is there anyone online, Jessica?
This is a real meaty topic. There appears to be no members of the public who would like to speak tonight. With that, I'm going to, I don't close the Are there questions for the staff or city attorney? Anyone? Everyone got their question and answers? All right, I'm closing tonight's public hearing. Council President.
All right. I move that council adopt the city ordinance embodied in the Agenda Bill 25043 and the ordinance adopting a new chapter of the City Code, Chapter 9.09, annexations.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion this evening? Will the recorder call the roll?
Counselor Duggar?
Yes.
Counselor Hartmeyer Prigg?
Yes.
Counselor Husson?
Yes.
Counselor Kimmy?
Yes.
Counselor Teeter?
Yes.
Counselor Tivnon?
Yes.
Mayor Beatty?
Yes.
7-0.
All right. Public hearing number 2, ordinance number 4864. Oh, congratulations. That was a really easy public hearing for you. Thanks for coming tonight. Ordinance number 4864, updated Beaverton City Council rules and ordinance amending Beaverton Code 2.11 relating to City Council rules in ordinance. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing. Oh, I already read that. Okay. I will ask the city attorney to explain how people can participate.
I will do that again. Anyone wishing to speak at this hearing should follow the instructions included on tonight's agenda. For those attending in person, please fill out a visitor comment card at the back of the room, and you can hand that to the city recorder at the end of the dais, and then wait to be called. Each member of the public who speaks at tonight's hearing will have 2 or 3 minutes to speak as determined by the presiding officer. When you speak, please give your name and city of residence for the record. After each person's comments, the council members may ask questions of the person speaking. At the very end, the council may ask questions of staff or the city attorney.
Is there a presentation? Oh, that's you too.
It is. That is correct. Well, myself and the city manager, we will be tag teaming this presentation tonight.
I also, before you go, I think the city manager and I thought this was going to come into consent because we've had a lot of conversations about this topic, but given our own rules, that's why it's in a public hearing, just for context. Go ahead.
And also because it's an ordinance and you're required by your charter to have a public hearing for the ordinance component of
Way
it.
to say what I said, but in a fancy legal way.
Well, good evening, council. So clearly we're going to be talking about the council rules and the ordinance update that's coming before you this evening. And could we go ahead and go to the next slide? And I'm going to start by just giving a brief overview of how we got here. So it's been a long road for the governance subcommittee, which was created in 2023. And from the subcommittee, they created an objective. And then after that, we came to all of you at a work session and we set the priorities for the governance subcommittee. We worked through those priorities and the rest of the council rules over the course of the year, about a year. And then we came back to you at a work session in August last year to bring you the final product. We've made a few additional tweaks, and then I have made sure that the Beaverton Code now coincides with the council rules that you all took a look at in August. And so we're coming back to you this evening to take a look at the entire package and put it before the council for adoption. A couple of key pieces to note. This is a complete set of council rules. However, there may be topics that you would like to, in the future, delve into further explore. The subcommittee felt strongly that it was important to get a final, complete product to you all for adoption. And then, of course, because this is a living document, we can review that hopefully on an annual or at least biannual basis, and bring to you new changes that you need, because again, this is the council's document and it needs to work for you, the council.
All right, well, that's me. So what I thought I would do with the council is go through some of the key changes in the document. It's very high level. I won't go through a level of detail in them, but they are notable differences. And I do want to just pause and thank the subcommittee. You had 3 members of your subcommittee that actually put this language together, provided really great edits and feedback. So I hope that you appreciate the work that was done over the past year on this. The first area that I wanted to note is on page 6, and it is under ethics requirements and reporting. It's the council compensation and reimbursement. This addition just simply highlights what the council stipend is provided and intended to cover. which is regular council duties, which is what you're at tonight, your public meetings, your meetings with staff, and local regional board commission meetings, for example. It also highlights a reimbursement process, which would be the same process that city employees are expected to follow under the travel policy. And it also sets forth an explanation of what city business is, which is basically representing the city for a purpose beyond regular council duties covered by the stipend. So if you have expenses that are beyond what you do, they are eligible for reimbursement. So great examples, city-related conventions, conferences, training, seminars, things of that nature. The next item is council meetings. It's section 2. You can find that on page 14. And this talks about recommendations from advisory boards. Basically, they will be evaluated by the city manager to deem whether they're appropriate to come before the council. I would be doing that in consultation with the mayor, and we would jointly make a recommendation to bring something forward for council's consideration. It's important that they align with your goals and priorities. The other item is a 2.11. These are proclamations. A proclamation list is attached for your information. These were identified by council. We're recommending that you approve these each year, and it sets forth the process for how you have a council proclamation added to the agenda. You can find that on section 2.9, the process, and then the mayoral proclamations. And then if you request a mayoral proclamation, it outlines the process for that as well, because that will involve the mayor's staff. Section 2.17, mobile devices. This is just basically a courtesy, making sure that you silence your phones. Try not to text one another or staff during the meetings, if at all possible. That is on page 18. Section 2.21, this is council subcommittees. This sets forth the process that you can establish a subcommittee, either an ad hoc committee, which is a temporary committee, or a standing committee, which is more permanent in nature. Section 3, advisory bodies, non-city boards and commissions. Section 3.2, council liaisons to advisory bodies. This is found on page 21 to 22. The mayor basically recommends and the council approves. This is outlined in the charter as well. It informs, the mayor makes the recommendations. You will basically approve those. However, we encourage you to have individual conversations with the mayor on your interest on these. You already have that process in play now. It's also important that when you are sitting on advisory board that you are representing positions that the council has taken, not your own individual or personal policy decisions. You also can't vote as part of a commission if you are an advisory to a commission. And we also encourage you to refrain from attending other other commission bodies that you're not currently sitting on. So for instance, if you're on Planning Commission, we would encourage you not to apply or not to attend another commission. That would be the Arts Commission if you are not appointed to that commission. Under Section 3, Task Force, this is 3.3. It establishes your mechanism for creating a task force. It also outlines the process which the mayor recommends, the council approves, and also it indicates that the task force will last 12 months unless the council takes action otherwise. The next one is 3.4. This is advisory body work plans. This just really codifies the process that we have in place where we're asking for boards and commissions to establish a work plan that aligns with your goals and priorities, and it is also through the budget process. And so again, we're just putting that in writing because this is something that we already do. Next slide. For Section 4, this is all about council relations and communications. Section 4.1 on communications with staff, this just acknowledges the separation between the council role and the city manager around day-to-day operations or the role of the city manager. It also talks about working in a spirit of cooperation, being mindful about time and workload when you're asking questions of staff. And it also indicates that if a request is made of staff that takes more than 2 hours, that item would come back before you on an agenda, and you would need to approve that if that is a body of work that you would like done. 4.2, general guidelines for effective, respectful council. This just says on page 25 that you agree to be prepared, you'll abide by your decisions made as a council, work with patience, courtesy, and civility, and that you'll openly share your concerns with one another from the dais. 4.5 is a communications agreement. This basically outlines your commitment and values to how you engage with each other, the community, and staff. It is Exhibit 4 to your packet and is found on page 27. Section 7, Annual Goal Setting. This is on page 29. It just establishes the process for your annual goal-setting process. It identifies November, the month of November, is when you will meet each year. It also indicates that we would be creating short and long-term goals with 2-year work plan. This is something that we've done in the past. And that the work plan for the council would be generated by March and presented to you. So generally speaking, spring each year would be the goal. Section 8, social media, this is on page 29 and 30, just establishes guidelines on the use of social media, so you can review that. Section 9 on council vacancy, this is on page 32. 9.2, it's just options for appointing an interim counselor. There's 2 processes that are identified. You can make a direct appointment of the council majority, or you can go through a recruitment and a notice process, do an application, and the council can actually interview the applicants. And then the last item is censure. This is section 10 on page 32. This talks about that this will lay forth a process to enforce the rules of the document. Alleged violations would be reported to the mayor. The mayor would educate and inform and provide alternatives if someone was to violate the policy. Council can investigate if they choose to do so. They need an executive session to discuss any potential findings. Notice would be given to the impacted counselor. And the goal of this is to do corrective action, nothing punitive. And so that's actually written in the language. If the behavior hypothetically continued, then council could have the discretion of issuing a written warning, or there could be a public reprimand if it's something of a serious nature. I recognize that on the censure that there could be a need in the future to outline in more detail what this process would look like, but the subcommittee felt I'm very comfortable with this part to just provide a framework for if and when this occurred. That concludes my comments on council rules, and I'll punt it back over to the attorney to talk about the ordinance changes.
So the important thing, I think, to realize about the ordinance and the council rules are how they work together. And so you'll notice that the ordinance that is proposed deletes a large number of sections. And the reason it does that is because most of that substantive content is moved to your council rules. The purpose of doing that is to allow the council to more easily update its council rules on an annual or biannual basis. It's easier for you to do that with a resolution than it is with an ordinance. And so what remains in the ordinance are things that are largely not things that the council can change easily. So for example, the ordinance process for adoption is still in your Beaverton Code provisions because it's mandated by charter, and it's pretty challenging to change that process very much, if at all, and still have it comply with all the terms of the charter. So other provisions that are required by the charter are also in there. There are a few redundancies in a couple of provisions that are important enough that they're in your council rules or they're in your council procedures in Beaverton Code 211, but then also repeated in your council rules as well, so that you, in general, have a very comprehensive document there. And so that's the relationship between those 2 documents. I just wanted to make sure that that was clear to the council and that you understood why so much of the content there is now gone. But it hasn't really gone. It's really just moved to your council rules.
Thank you. City Manager, I just had a clarifying question. I don't know if I misheard, but you were talking about the advisory body, and those are like our internal, right, boards and commissions potentially. And then there's the external, the non-city. And I thought I heard you say on the external bodies that we cannot vote, but I think it's the other way around.
No, I was just speaking only to the council liaisons to advisory bodies,
okay,
not your external appointments.
Okay, thank you.
I will turn on my microphone.
No, not online or in person.
Okay, there appears to be no members of the public who wish to comment on tonight's matter. I'll now close the public hearing. What is the pleasure of the council? Go ahead, Councilor Hartmeyer-Prieg.
I move that council adopt a resolution adopting the council rules and an ordinance amending Beaverton Code Chapter 2.11 relating to city council rules of procedure.
Second?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. We'll start discussion tonight. I'll just say that, like, Megan, this has been so much work. And I think Allison, or Counselor Tivnon and Counselor Hartmeyer-Prigg, like, we had many hours of meetings with the city attorney, the city manager, thoughtfully discussing everything that was in here. We took notes in 2 council retreats ago where we had pages and pages of notes of everyone's desires, and we had really, and not everything was always 100% agreement. I think we had thoughtful disagreement. We came to a really good place. And this is mostly framework of how we treat each other and how we respond and act. And so I think, like, this document just represents all of that hard work, and it's not easy for our staff to intervene and give us direction on rules, but we are 4 years into this new form of government, and this document is complete. And I would also just say, subcommittees are designed to produce this quality of work. And for us to move big things like this, it has to happen in those smaller meetings. So great work on these. With that, Councillor Teeter.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Megan. I really like this. I think this is a really great starting point for our council rules document. And I would support this even if we didn't have any changes. I do have a couple questions just for feedback from the rest of my colleagues here. The first might be related, well, both of them could be related to section 1.4 that's talking about ethics and potential conflicts of interest. I've seen in some communities there are city councilors who are serving on community board, organization boards, that are also pursuing funding from the city government, either receiving funding or trying to get funding, and it can create a very messy environment where there might not be an actual conflict of interest with financial gain, but there can definitely be perceived conflicts of interest. And so this is kind of an open question for you all and council. Is that something that we feel like we should add there, or do we feel like this covers it well enough? And then the second question I had is, and I'm not wanting to call out Councilor Kimmy here, but I'm wondering if there should be something about international involvement, like if somebody is a representative of a foreign government, is there any conflict there? And again, I mentioned Councilor Kimmy because he's a consulate for South Korea. And I'm not wanting it to be about that role specifically, but in the future, is this something that we should be considering? Is it a concern to anybody? Or is there any protection we should have in this document about any sort of role or conflict of interest there? It might not be a financial gain, but just something I've been thinking about. I'm not sure where I stand, so I'm open to any of y'all's thoughts too. So just some open questions. I would approve this as we have it because it is a lot of great work it's gone into it. It's a great starting point. So thank you.
I think that I'll give you a little feedback on the ethics piece of it because I worked for an organization that received money from the city, and when I was at Virginia Garcia, we were going through the planning process of the building here, and as a member of the executive team, I met regularly with Bill Kirby that I could have voted and not had a direct ethical issue because I didn't have a gain, but I recused myself from all of the decisions around that. So I think I'm okay if we want to add some rules around ethics, and the ethics are personal, and that's the challenging piece of it. We don't see it on this council as much because most of our council doesn't work for not-for-profits, but we see this as a big issue with Metro because a lot of their electeds also work for nonprofits, and it receives a lot of criticism. So I'd be open to a revision in the future. I mean, I think Councilor Kimmy and I, and not to make it about, we've had many conversations around how to kind of separate out that business that he's doing. I do think it's messy that he represents, no offense, a foreign government, and it's hard, and we are working together on making sure that he's in the right place in the right space, and I don't know how we would add that to the rules. That's the piece that I would struggle with. So I don't know if you have any suggestions on something like that.
Oregon ethics law sets the base for all of these, and it's incredibly fact dependent. And to your point that it is personal to each individual counselor, I think it would be quite challenging to add a very specific rule. However, it is the base, and the council could take a position, for example, regarding like nonprofits and how it was going to handle that, and that you were going to, for example, always recuse yourself in a vote. I mean, you could have a council rule like that around that type of action. But again, it's something we could develop in the future. We can certainly add it to the list of things to explore at the next council rules evaluation.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No.
Okay, now it's on. My understanding is that the council rules, while they're very prescriptive to us and our viewpoints on how to successfully do this job, that there's also some basic ethic guidelines that everyone is bound by in public office. So we can't get everything in here, but there's assumptions that are made that there's still other guidelines that we'll follow, like recusing ourselves if we have a conflict of interest. And obviously in public hearings, that's really spelled out, but I think it's also on each of us as individuals to call it out when we know that there is something that we really shouldn't weigh in on. And so I'm not as concerned about that being, or us trying to exhaust the list of things under ethics. And if it comes to light later on, and it's not covered in here, it might still become an issue that needs to, maybe that falls into the censure category if there's something that we believe falls out of alignment with our values and with our ethics as a body. But that's just, I don't know, because just also thinking, I don't know if we can capture the entire list of potential things under this category.
So ironically, I had looked at this section also and been like, ooh, but what I think of is that we are all doing our OJEC, like the Oregon Government Ethics Commission stuff, which I think is another layer of ethics. Very specific to land. Okay. I just think like less the foreign one and more the nonprofit one. Like, is there something there? I don't know that this, like, that we do it now or that it's a future thinking one. I did struggle with some of the points here, but mostly because, to Councillor Tivnon's point, it's really contingent on us to hold ourselves accountable about what we think is and isn't a conflict. It's very easy to say that I requested preferential treatment for someone. Like, we think we could all argue that if we were feeling kind of spicy. So, I mean, I hear you. I don't know what addition there is, aside from, if you're on a nonprofit board and there is funding that you should, but I just think we would do that. But then do you want to explicitly state that here? I don't know. Just responding to your questions.
I just wish there was something between the explicit rules and censorship, because I feel like censure is like
extreme. So
extreme. Like, I can't even think of an issue outside of like straight murder where I would probably censure somebody. So that's something for us to wrestle with in the future, because I think that it doesn't feel like there's a way for accountability to be had with each other. And, I was also a lobbyist in a previous role, and like I had to work really like diligently on like when I was a city councilor, when I was working in this position. And it's just hard when you're part-time. These things are going to continue to happen. Councillor Husson? I'm sorry, Councillor Teeter, were you? Okay.
I want to thank the three of you. I cannot imagine what this was like. I'm sure you had a lot of fun. So thank you for that. Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, City Attorney. I had one suggestion or thought. I did get to talk with Mayor Beatty a little bit about it, so we had a healthy discussion, but I want to put it all to you. I think it's page 23. Less about our current council. So I see this as like a document. Granted, new councils can update it, but we are giving them the guiding document for how we want them to do things and how we want folks to move. And so the suggestion was, and I'm sorry because I jumped pages, so give me a minute, to look at page 23. Okay, the non-city boards and commissions. I think the process we're having right now works. I'm not upset about it, or I think it's working for us. I do wonder, do we put some language around a possible work session and/or require a work session where the body discusses this together. Again, less about this mayor, but more about public transparency, people understanding how we're making those decisions and understanding who is on city boards. I don't think it has to be a required. I think it could be like we suggest, but it was something that was on my mind. Again, less about what's been going on here and more about building for the future of future city councils.
I would just say from my perspective, like, that is an impossible task. It is really hard to make appointments, and for 7 people to try to kind of come to some agreement. I think we have created a really good process in the mayor's office where we take your feedback, your scheduling, what you're needing to do. And I personally do not want to have conversations about my schedule in public, and not about the meetings, those are public record, but about why I can't attend a meeting or what I'm doing and just the security issues that my family has had. I think it's a dangerous public thing to do. I think the checks and balances of the mayor recommending and the council confirming is what the charter had in mind to keep things that way. And so I think a public meeting wouldn't serve more of a purpose than the situation we have now. And I talked to each of you about your boards. And the reality is, guys, some of these boards are not sexy, and none of you volunteer to do them. And we can have a public meeting about that, and I'm still going to force one of you to do it. Councilor Duggar.
Thanks. A couple things. Commend the work. I mean, that goes without saying. It's nice to have clear guidelines for the first real time, because I think we all have ideas on how to be in a city councilor, and just having rules in place, and it's good. I also hear Councilor Tier. I think those are good points that you made. I am open to kind of reviewing those over time. I also don't want to jam pack this document right away. You know, I kind of want to give it some space to see how it works over time. I also think, you know, regarding some things, this is for us, but ultimately, you know, we report to the voters of Beaverton, and I trust them to, you know, to kind of make that decision for us if we're not acting in a way that they find appropriate. And so I think these guidelines are great, and I think even if we follow the guidelines, they are not a guarantee that we will get reelected or be appreciated by the voters for what we do. So I still think we have that accountability there. Right, so I think that's something that I would like to point out. I'll be honest, I'm a little uncomfortable with some of the social media rules, and I don't post on social media very often. I think the last time I posted was June of last year, so especially around section 8.8, and that's on the notice. And the reason I'm a little uncomfortable with this, I'm not going to stop it. I still support this. It's just, like, what constitutes city business, right? Like, I have my personal Instagram. Sometimes people reach out to me on that, and they'll ask me a question about the city. And I don't have some of these things posted. I do have on my campaign account that this is my personal account, and it just reflects my opinion, I think is listed in the first suggestion. But I don't have a link to the city. I don't have section 4 listed, which is a giant paragraph, and I don't think I could even fit that on the Instagram page anywhere. But like, my intention isn't to discuss city business on that, right? But I cannot control what people reach out to me for. And so that's what makes me a little uncomfortable about some of these things. I just want to be compliant, but I also want to have a space where, you know, I can share what I want to share that has nothing to do, you know, it's about my political leanings or my political voice. And so I'm comfortable with the document as is, but I would like to plant the seed that maybe there's an opportunity for us as we consider changes over the next year or two to see how we're all compliant and see what all we can do and see what works. So that's just all. I commend the work. I think this is a giant leap forward for us operating as a body. And I think we had a lot of problems, but I do think it sets, you know, we're not always going to be on this council, and it sets clear rules and expectations. So I think it's a really, really great step. So thank you all for this work.
Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Thank you. While the subcommittee did put in a lot of work, Megan really, really put in a lot to make this happen, and was so thorough with a cross-reference too about charter, ordinances, rules, Oregon state law, ethics commission, right? So the reason I share that is that some of the concerns I hear, I think that as a subcommittee, we actually probably touched on each of those subjects. And generally, if one of us felt really strongly about something, we would try to kind of push ourselves to talk it through, to ask advice from city manager and city attorney around the ethics concerns. We talked about this quite a lot, and ultimately we're each responsible for ourselves, to Councilor Tifnon's point, and it's really important that we take that responsibility, right, and don't have to, I guess, enumerate every single thing that could potentially be a violation. So I think that like we tried to be thorough, but try to find a balance, because while we wanted to move the rules into a resolution and not an ordinance, because it will simplify for us to adjust as needed and future councils to adjust, it's also meant to be like, hey, yeah, we think that this works for ourselves and also future councils potentially, right? And so I just wanted to throw that out there. But also then when it comes to ethics or rules violations, or even, I really love the communication agreement. That was something that I've also seen another council use recently, in having kind of the awkward, like, you kind of violated our rules conversation. You know, they referred to their communications policy, and it gives you just a nice framework to say, we all agreed to this, and you acted against that. But it's important for us to have open and direct conversations, and I know that sometimes it's hard because as a group, we only get to talk in public together. But it's also important that we do that. And so I think that that was the spirit for me is going through this, is like, remember that we're each adults and individuals, and how much of this needs to be explicit versus, can we give it some examples? Can we give some guidance? The non-city boards one, Councilor Hassan, I hear you're asking. I know we've talked about it at past meetings too. We talked about it at the subcommittee as well. I think that while we chose to be elected, we still want some of those privacies. I think I'm also just nervous about the boundaries that we might have to cross in order to say like why I might not be willing to do something or cannot attend one of those. So I'm personally hesitant to add that in. And I like that only the mayor has to know my schedule, I guess, right? In some of this, like, it's nice to know there's just kind of like a little bit more private there. And then the social media part, I remember the League of Cities a couple years ago, I went to a specific social media breakout, and they talk a lot about the First Amendment piece. And that's actually why there's so much of this in here, is that if we aren't clear, how we are acting, who are we? Am I Ashley Hartmeyer Prigg, just the person with pink hair, or am I Ashley Hartmeyer Prigg, the city councilor? And so it's really important that we kind of list those things out, and that you do put those caveats in there. I have stopped using like social media for like public official things, don't have a campaign page, any of that anymore. And for me, if someone reaches out, I say, you need to reach out to me at my council email. Please do not tag me when I was representing the city in this, because like that's my personal page. And I know it's inconvenient, but it also just kind of helps like set that boundary and sets that delineation. And so I think that we took on the responsibility of the role, and I think the rules as written give us good guidelines, give us maybe some good discussion around some of the topics that we've even kind of wrestled with as a council. So sorry, that was a lot, but I just want to provide some context from my recollection of the last year plus on the subcommittee. And so I'm very comfortable with it moving forward as is.
Councilor Kimmy.
Yeah, I mean, I want to thank the subcommittee for putting all this time and coming up with 98 pages of written documents. I would have not done that. But also, I like every content in the document, and because of my role was mentioned regards to my honorary role, it's like it's honorary. It's like it's got no authority, no power. It's like I thank you for your service to the community for all these years, basically. So I don't foresee any conflict coming, but then I think if I cross a certain boundary, I have city attorney, city manager, and good mayor here let me know, hey, we have to be careful. So I always will be mindful of where I lay, where I sit down. Also, the limitations that we asked all the time, right? But like wherever we go, Somebody will look at me as a city councilor. Somebody will look at me a chiropractor. Somebody will look at me like honorary consul. I can't help that, right? But then if somebody has a question, if it involves any city business, I have to let them clearly know my boundaries, right? So, but then we also have each other to watch out for. So if somebody has uncomfortable, you can let us know. Of course, it's never going to rise to the essential level, but then as Councilor Duggar knows, voters will tell you every few years, right? And then I also want to mention that it's a beautiful document, but I'd like to revisit, maybe set a time, like maybe 2 years down the road, let's just do this and put it on our calendar, that if there's no issue, then we'll just say, hey, move on. But then I like to put it in the writing, per se, that we want to revisit to review the document in a year or two. I don't know the exact time, but I like to review it. And if there's an issue, we don't have to try to find consensus among each other. We know it's coming down the pipeline. So I think I feel more comfortable if I could put that in.
She mentioned in the opening that we're going to review our rules on a more annual basis. Yeah. Isn't that what we decided?
Yes, the document is intended to be revisited on a regular basis, whether that's part of your council retreat or part of a work session. That'll be up to the city manager how best to schedule that. But that is the intent of the rules. It is not specifically written in here that it must be reviewed on any particular time frame, but that is the intention.
Yeah, and in our past city council composite, we did it during our annual goal-setting session. Mm-hmm. Councilor Tivnan.
One of the, we all bring very distinct, unique perspectives to this body, but I think one thing we all have in common is we all have opinions about things. And I'm sure with every single subcommittee we've ever stood up, any one of us would have raised our hand and said, yeah, I'll be on it. So this one in particular, because it so deeply and immediately affects us, I just want to say thank you to trusting us to carry this forward over a year. And of course, thank you to Megan for helping us along with this as well. This is a working, living, breathing document, and it will invariably change over time because we're not always going to be here. Others might have different perspectives. To your point, if something just doesn't feel like it's working quite right, I love that we have the ability to go back and revisit it. On the 2 points that were mentioned, I prefer the boards and commissions appointments to function the way they are for the reasons that were mentioned around schedule, but also because I have had moments where I'm like, I can't serve on that particular, body because, and then listed a constraint and it was heard and there was flexibility that I found in it so far. If it was ever a point where that wasn't working anymore, we have the ability to revisit it, which I would welcome that conversation. And for social media, I'm kind of on board with Hartmeyer-Prigg on this one. Just having seen some other elected officials get in hot water, for various reasons. The last thing I'll say on this is that when I went into this, yes, it was for how we all engage with each other, but it was also for future counselors. That was really where my head was because, boy, do I wish I had had this on day one. Actually, I wish I'd had this the day I decided I was going to run. Or actually, I wish I'd had this when I was deciding if I wanted to. And so because of that, I would strongly encourage us to have this as part of the packet that folks that are even just considering running for council, that this is a part of the body of information that they get to help inform that decision, but especially during onboarding, that they're actually required to read it. And just for ourselves, because I don't know about you, but we ingest so much information, a lot of this stuff becomes murky and clouded over time that we all just make a commitment to go back and reread it every once in a while. Maybe anytime we get reelected, if we get reelected, so.
With that, let's call the roll.
Mayor Beatty? Yes. Councilor Tivnan?
Yes.
Councilor Teeter?
Yes.
Councilor Kenny?
Yes.
Councilor Hassan? Counselor Hartmeyer Prigg,
Yes.
Counselor Duggar. 7-0.
Awesome. And colleagues, we are going to take a break till 7:30. Okay, thank you.
I was like,
I feel like this is going to be such an easy topic because we have been talking about this for a long time, and we gave a preview to it last night. So I hope you're here with great news.
Well, I'm really just updating you on where we are at mid-year on our current budget. So I'm not certain I can give you a lot of great news, but I can give you a good update.
Perfect.
So just a reminder of our overall total budget. So our total budget of all resources is about $525 million. What you typically see when we show you this chart is the beginning working capital worked into that because that's the components of the balanced budget. I wanted to pull the revenue out and show it to you separately and then show you the beginning working capital as those are additional resources that we do budget into our overall budget. So our beginning working capital in all funds is about the half of what we actually pull in revenue. It's just a little under half. And that would be, so when you look at this including all our funds, this includes our utility funds, which as you're aware, we do have some debt on that. So there's money in the bank to pay for some of those large projects. So it's appropriate to have a large working capital when you have a capital improvement program to be able to fund those things because you do have to save up money over time. So overall, when you look at the components of our revenue, total revenue, property tax, intergovernmental, and interfund transfers are all kind of the same. And interfund transfers, those come into the various different funds, and you'll see in the expense there's transfers that go out. So overall, I like to show you the numbers and where we are progressively. Property taxes, we've collected about 94% of our total budget in property tax. Those typically come in before, bulk of them in that fall timeline because there is a discount offered if you pay your property taxes by a specific date. So we do get a lot of our property taxes before December 31st. So about 94% of that came in before year end. And then, everything else is running about where it should be. You look at the permits and fees line, that's a little over. And so that just shows how active we are in building and putting permits out there and how active that department is. The other one that is a little higher is our interest in miscellaneous, and that is where kind of unexpected monies might come in. We have investment income and just a bunch of different miscellaneous things that come in over time. And it looks like a really large number, but when you spread it across all the different funds, it's not really a large number. Overall, look at our expenditures. So our expenditures are for all funds about $394 million. And of that, we have the personnel and materials and services, which is primarily our operating costs for all funds. And then our capital outlay, as you can see, is a pretty large component as well, and that's all the projects that we're taking on. You heard about some of those earlier today in the city manager's report. I like to show kind of by department how it's broken out amongst all funds. So when you look at some of your departments, like your police department, when it's spread across all of our funds, is 9%, and public works is 24% in their operations. But again, they run a multitude of our funds, and our utilities are very large funds. So looking at the expenditure budget, overall, we're about 31% spent. In our personnel services, we're tracking right about halfway, right about where we would expect to be, a little bit of savings. Capital outlay, that's timing. So oftentimes you can't do a lot in the, you can get the summer months and then there's a gap and then you start picking it up in the spring. So that's trending right about where it should. But let's talk about the general fund. So when we look at our general fund and we look at the revenues in our general fund of $89.6 million, and we have beginning working capital another $23 million. So if you recall, we did pass a budget of $110 million for the general fund. 23 million of that was beginning working capital. And I like to show this chart pulling out that beginning working capital so you can really see where those revenues, as was pointed out earlier by Councilor Duggar, property tax is the largest funder of the general fund at 57% of our revenue. We do have other taxes, right-of-way fees, and other taxes, which is a good component as well, about 15%. So showing you the numbers, again, property taxes have been 94% collected, but overall our revenues were about 72%. And if you look at the permit and fee line, again, that one is much larger than what we had projected. So that's an area where we will try to understand what's going on a little bit better to get our projections a little better going forward, but you never really know what that activity is going to be, so sometimes you have to look at what's in the pipeline and look at long-range planning and what they think is going to come in line. But again, we thought with our TLT we would see 2 new hotels, and that's taken longer than anticipated. So we have tended to be conservative in our revenue projections, but we really want to make sure that we're not too conservative. Here's just an overall view of our expenditures in the general fund, and you can see our capital outlay is very small, and so that would be really related to mostly rolling stock. So we don't have a lot of capital projects that the general fund pays for. We have other sources that pay for most of our capital projects. So this is our general, our rolling stock, police vehicles, just other rolling stock that's needed to manage our operations in the general fund. When we look at expenditures by department, I have rolled administration into a group because otherwise you'd have lots of little teeny pieces of pie. And administration would include the city council, the city attorney, city manager, community engagement communications, equity inclusion, public works admin, which includes landscaping, so I know that's not administration, but I didn't pull it out. And then there's capital development engineering, which administers our projects. So overall, when you look at it this way, our police department is 45% of our general fund, but there are no other revenue sources to fund police. So that is appropriate that they would take up most of your general fund. Overall, looking at the numbers, and you see we are not at 50% of the year past, we're about 43% spent, so we're pretty much in line where we expected to be at this point of time. And then I did want to show you the administration departments as well, so that, they weren't just in a group. You could actually see where those are. And overall, you can see that we're right in line, 39% spent, so we're maybe underspending in a couple areas, but yet to be determined what that means. And so I will turn it over to our city manager for the last two slides.
Thank you. So this slide, I think, is a new slide that you haven't seen, and it reflects previous budget shortfalls. And there's a story to this where we began our fiscal sustainability journey in fiscal year ending 23 with a $5 million deficit, and we were able to plug that hole, and we used reserves. And that gave us time to start creating the sustainability planning that you all participated in. And then, as you recall, we had a $10 million shortfall. And then we started to slowly chip away at that shortfall. And it dropped to $7 million, and then dropped to $6 million. And that's what we had originally anticipated. And then when we updated the forecast early this year at $11 million, we were finding that we were having more drivers related to PERS and healthcare and whatnot, which we kind of had to do a U-turn. So the purpose of showing you this slide is that there's been a lot of really good work done, and so I wanted you to see that those numbers were going down, but sometimes life gives us curveballs, and we'll deal with it. And the $11 million, I want to just point out a few things for you on that number. It does assume a certain percentage of underspending, because each year we don't actually spend the full budget. It also assumes a level of vacancy rate as well, because we do end the year with not every single position filled. So that brings that number to around 11 million. If we showed a number that was fully funded and all the positions were filled, it would be much higher. So we typically start our budget with that assumption, and then we start chipping away at it. The arrow on the right just shows you that we're battling a flat decrease in revenue, which doesn't help our situation. The cost of living was also a player in this, an increase in PERS 17% and healthcare. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that some of our challenges, and I know this is not everyone's favorite slide, but you'll see some of those challenges continue to follow us. Our total revenues, which are the green line on the top, and then our expenditures are that dark red line, and you can see that they're spreading apart, and that's because our expenditures are outpacing our revenues. And as you saw in Debbie's slides, 70% of our expenditures are personnel. And many of the expanding lines are being driven because we have expected PERS increases in the out years. So in 27, 28, 29, we will probably have another big increase in PERS, and so we're planning and anticipating for that. The bottom two lines are familiar as well. The red line is basically what our reserve target is, which is 11% of expenditures. And then our blue line, of course, is that if we don't have the structural solutions, our revenues could potentially go negative, but that's not what we're going to do. We'll be presenting to you structural changes to prevent that line from dropping below the red line. So that's just a reminder of the work that we're doing right now through the budget and review process, and then we'll be presenting you a budget hopefully by the end of April. So it concludes my comments. Happy to answer any questions.
Councilor Hartmeyer-Prigg.
Thank you. Debbie, I have some questions for you, please. Okay, so if we go back to, we could go just to like slide 12, where it's the general fund expenditures. Actually, wait, no, I have a revenue question first, sorry. So we're gonna go further back. Let's go to the very first table you showed. This one. Okay, so when we see there's, a chunk of them are below 50% of revenues so far. Is that expected at the mid-year point? So you explained how, for example, property taxes were at 94% because so much of it comes in the fall, right? When you pay, right. Is there anything else like that we should no.
So if you look at the next two lines, taxes, franchise fees, right-of-way fees, and intergovernmental, our intergovernmental partners typically don't give us our second quarterly payment until after December 31st, so it wouldn't show in here. So, yes, there is other things, it's timing that shows in here.
Okay. And things like fines and forfeitures, those are, we can project them, but those are like, do they come to fruition because of circumstance?
Correct.
Okay. And then if we could, well, actually, no, I think still on here, what line does TLT fit into?
The TLT has its own fund, so
Okay.
it's not in this.
It's not in this one?
Mhm.
Okay. Because you had made a comment about, you know, with TLT, we had hoped to have 2 more hotels come in. It wasn't-
Correct. And if those 2 hotels came in, our property tax would go up, and we'd have more visitors in spending money, so that would then drive other revenues, not TLT revenue.
Thank you, okay. And then if we were, so for example, in the line where we were over, I think it was like fees and development, maybe?
Permits and fees?
Permits and fees, okay. So for example, if we take in more in permits and fees or any other revenue line over what we projected, does that revenue then go into reserve fund balance? Like, what happens with excess revenue since we had a balanced budget at the start?
It does drop into fund balance unless the council decides to spend it on something else, like if we bring forward a supplemental and say we wanted to recognize additional revenue. We don't typically do that because we typically have enough in contingency. We don't need to. But yes, anything unspent or any excess revenue all drops into fund balance at year end, and that goes into your beginning working capital for your next year's budget.
Thank you.
Any other questions, or did she stun you with her intellect?
Give a comment too.
Sure, friend. Go
Okay.
for it.
Thank you, and thank you, City Manager, for helping the slides 14 and 15, really showing and telling the story of this is so important, because I think at our last retreat, and when we said that our financial recovery and our fiscal sustainability is the highest priority, it's because I think of that. We want to see that line keep going down, and just that when there's circumstances outside of our control that then drive that cost up, it's just really helpful to like reflect on the work that was done. The efforts that the council and that the city have made over the years are not for nothing, right? Like, and because of all that work, that's 11 and it's not 18 or 19, right? Because of the work that was done over the years past. And so I just want to acknowledge that, like, there's been hard choices that staff has made, that council has made, that our community has, you know, maybe had less of something because of it. And we're facing another year of that. But the hope is that we turn it around and Beaverton becomes a sustainable community again, right? And that we're not facing hard things like bankruptcy like other communities are. And so we have another hard year ahead. I appreciate the update, and we appreciate the diligence around our budget, right? It is what keeps us operating. And I think we heard through State of the City, and we've heard regularly from staff, like hard year coming again. And so just thank you all for the work and for looking for those places, because we are going to have a lot of hard conversations again. And so thank you just for the update and to see where we're at, and for answering questions that maybe I should know the answer to already, but just appreciate the time.
I know I kind of egged you guys on, but you do not have to talk. So if there's no value, you don't have to come back in. And I was going to say what Ashley said, so ditto.
I know,
Boom.
I'm actually putting it
All right, Counselor Duggar.
Yeah, mine is really quick. One of the things I think our role is to educate the public on some of the stuff. So I guess my ask is there a quick talking points document or something that could be drafted? Because I'm having conversations with people in the community. I'm sure my colleagues are, to help prepare them for what's coming, just anecdotally. But I also want to make sure I'm using the same points that everyone else is, or making sense in a way. So if there's like a 5 or 6 bullet talking point document that you could distribute to us, I think that'd be really helpful in prepping the community for some of the stuff that's coming. So that's all. That's
I think we should all just get tattooed that bar graph that city manager did, that 5 million we corrected, but it's like this other, so I don't want the community to walk away to think that we've let this structural issue go. There are outside forces, particularly PERS and labor, And so I think that, to me, is the talking point. And I think also on there is the talking point around police, because it looks disproportionate in the general fund when you take it only from the general fund, but the fact there's not other revenue. So I think the city manager's team can help with that. Councilor Kimmy.
Okay. Every time I see the graph projection, how it's getting wide, I get very nervous. Because I think I used this analogy before, like Apollo 13. You're trying to find a little bit of wattage to save the ship to come back to Earth. I just wonder, you haven't seen that?
Does that analogy even make sense for this?
Oh yeah, trying to squeeze, the voltage out of it. But when do you expect to have Blue Line start to change course?
When we make tough decisions.
Is it?
Go ahead.
Probably not for some time until, I think to the mayor's point, we make some structural decisions that will help that line get into this place that we want it to be. But we also have to have some good conversations around the level of expenditure drops, and then we have to have some revenue conversations. But making those structural changes is what the community is going to look for first, and then we can start on talking about how we're going to correct some of that with the revenue. So to manage your expectations, it's going to take several years.
Okay. Yeah, I fully expected that, but I just want to share that I think we all agreed on financial recovery. That's our guiding principle this year. So you'll see me consistently voting against any new projects. But unless it brings home,
what you want.
unless it brings some revenue of some kind, positive revenue. But then my another goal is to, within my tenure, next 4 years, I do want to correct course. So I don't know what that looks like. So I just want to mention that. Thank you.
Councilor Hassan.
Councilor Hartmeyer-Prig inspired a question when she was in her line of questioning. So you talked about like the 102%, like that permits and fee slide. And so the excess you said goes into reserve. Isn't it possible though because of this form of government, because you said it would come to the council, it wouldn't really come to the council. Couldn't the city manager transfer in an area that you needed it, or is that not?
No.
Okay.
That would be a violation of budget law.
Thank you. Okay, I just wanted to, okay, well.
I think the other thing to consider with that, though, is like with permitting staff, we saw this in the 2008 crash, and when we have other dips, like we have to have money in reserves to maintain our staff level, because we can't bring in and take out permitting staff based on market dips and going. So yes, we're overproducing right now, but the reason we've been able to maintain staffing over the long haul is that we kind of have these ebbs and flows to maintain it.
Okay, and then ditto what Councilor Hartmeyer-Prig and Mayor Beatty said about the great work.
Well, there you go. Easy beasy. All right. Toodaloo, buckaroo. Any I'm just going off my Council new business. Anyone have any thoughts? With that, we are over. Boom.